We're going to begin with the latest on the unfolding situation in Japan. We have several reports, starting with Ann Curry, who is in Shishigama in the hard-hit region of Myogi. Good morning to you, Ann.
Good morning to you, Meredith. And I'm in a city called Minamisan-riku. And in this town, it is one of the most devastated towns in the most affected region of this epic disaster in Japan. And 4 days after the quake and tsunami, this is an area still barely reached by the outside world.
NBC News has obtained this home video of the tsunami as it struck the coastal fishing village of Minamisan-riku, considered one of the hardest hit, where 10,000 of 17,000 residents are now missing. It is a city obliterated and heartbroken. Hirome Horiuchi can't find 6 members of her family. Another new eyewitness video also shows the power of the wave as it engulfed the coastal city of Miyako. The destruction is so widespread, so sudden, the Prime Minister is calling this Japan's gravest crisis since World War II. This is a nation on edge, hit with more than 1,000 aftershocks, which sounded the alarm in Sendai repeatedly this weekend.
They're yelling at us because they're saying that a tsunami is coming right now. They're yelling at everybody to get out of the way. So we're leaving the area.
Tsunami alarms are so frequent, even emergency crews have lost count. Add to that, the quake impacted nuclear power plants.
The Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency says an explosion occurred in the number 3 reactor building of the Fukushima number 1 nuclear power plant around 11 a.m. Japan time on Monday.
Now, more than 180,000 people have been evacuated from around the plants, which have released some radiation. More than 60 nations have pledged aid, sending in search and rescue teams, including from Europe and China on Sunday. U.S. teams are already on the ground searching. The U.S. Navy has dispatched 8 warships.
We're over here to help protect the Japanese people.
The aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, arrived on Sunday to bring in supplies by helicopter. And in the midst of so much destruction, there is hope. Floating for 2 days, 60-year-old Horimitsu Shikawa was found alive, clinging to the roof of his house nearly 10 miles out to sea. And in Natori, where many buildings are leveled, survivors on a rooftop saw signs of life in the debris. And 3 elderly people who'd been trapped for 20 hours in a car were saved.
And even here, someone was found alive in rubble today. And though this town has been virtually destroyed, a woman said to me today, "We will be strong. We will rebuild." Meredith, back to you.
Yeah, some positive thoughts in the midst of such devastation. And besides all the aftershocks, there are reports of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, without water, food, electricity, heat, and now the threat of radiation exposure. How are people coping with this?
It's very difficult. People are standing in long lines for food and for fresh water, for gas, just to get around. The hotels are closed down. Electricity is down. People are coping by leaning on each other. We found that really true here in this hardest hit region. People have established evacuation centers in schools, in other places, sleeping together in classrooms, sharing food. It really has been a matter of people helping each other because the outside help has not yet arrived. So they're really relying on each other as long as their food, the meager food, the rations they have will last, Meredith.
Yeah, you talk about people standing in lines. What I've noticed is that they're patiently standing in lines. There's almost a sense of order there. Often after a natural disaster, there are stories about looting. You don't hear about that right now in Japan. Does that surprise you?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. You usually do hear those kinds of stories. I'm not surprised because I have lived, and my father's in the military. I lived in Japan, and order is really a word that you can use to describe the character of the Japanese people. But absolutely, we've seen no examples of any kind of looting. We have seen however, a kind of stoicism. You know, there are people who are de-traumatized. We saw this in some of the faces of some of the evacuation centers we've seen. And yet there's a kind of resilience, and even people are smiling through their tears, trying to move on, trying to look towards the future. And that's really kind of the impression that we've been getting as we meet the people. And we have more reporting on that coming up.
Yeah, and the rescue workers who are beginning to pour into the country, how are they dealing with the massive effort in front of them?
You know, largely they're struggling getting into place. I mean, the roads are often blocked, or the traffic is really paralyzed. The trains are down. The planes are not landing in this upper region, largely because there's a lot of concern about tsunamis, but also because of these aftershocks. There's been so many aftershocks and other subsequent earthquakes. So the difficulty has been just to get up here. It takes hours and hours, and so that's one of the reasons why aid has yet to arrive. But the good news in all this, Meredith, is that we're starting to see signs that the outside world is beginning to reach, and I suspect, if not today, tomorrow, the next day, we'll start to see a major arrival, I think, of outside aid based on what we're hearing from the agencies we've been dealing with.
All right, Ann Curry, thank you very much.